Sutra 47. Yo vivikshtanam sevate yo loka bandha munmulayati nistray gunyo bhavati yo yogekshimam tyajati. Who can overcome delusion? He who lives in solitude, cuts off the bondages of this world, goes beyond the three qualities of nature, and renounces the idea of obtaining or preserving the objects of the world. The Bhagavad Gita 13.10 states, "Do your devotional practice with dedication and live in a holy place, away from materialistic people." Spiritual masters who have written many commentaries on this aphorism have said that Sage Narad is instructing aspirants to cut off all worldly relations and live in solitude. These remarks imply that Sage Narad is contradicting himself by advising all spiritual aspirants to attain holy association and also recommending a life of isolation. The Srimad Bhagavatam recounts a tale of a young girl whose family were interviewing suitors for her marriage. One day, while she was home alone, a prospective groom and his family came to her house. The maiden had to carry the whole burden of entertaining them. While she was cooking, her bracelets jingled. Fearing her guests would be disturbed, she took off her bangles one by one, till only 2 remained on each wrist. When those 2 bangles still made noise, she took another off each hand, leaving only 1. Then she was able to do her work in silence. The Srimad Bhagavatam concludes that one should therefore live alone for the sake of peace in spiritual practice. However, the commentator Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that this instruction is meant for followers of the path of knowledge. The path of devotion is different. Bhakti Devi is a queen who wears many colourful bangles to please her husband, and her husband is pleased to hear the jingling of her bangles when she runs into his arms and embraces him. Therefore, in this world, Bhakti Devi brings devotees together so that they can please the Lord with joyful tumult of Sankirtan. Thus, Sage Narad does not mean one must live in seclusion throughout one's life. Living under these extreme conditions, the aspirant is in danger of becoming egotistical. In fact, the aphorisms begin by establishing that the path of devotion is for everyone, including householders, merchants, businessmen, and students. Under these circumstances, it is not possible for these groups of people to completely cut connections with their relations and live in seclusion. Some aspirants leave their households where their minds remain disturbed and prevent them from any devotional practice, and they choose to reside in solitary places. Some delude themselves into thinking that they are rid of all worldly attachments, such as friends, family, money, and so forth, and that their renunciation is fully mature. Other aspirants argue with family members, and as an act of rebellion, they leave their homes. Such aspirants will not succeed because they will carry the dissatisfaction, bitterness, and wounded egos wherever they go. In one's sincere efforts to tread the path of devotion, misunderstanding this aphorism can lead to failure. Hence, Sage Narad recommends occasional solitude for the aspirant. Whilst living in seclusion, a devotee can completely devote himself to the Lord. The absence of connections to the mundane world enables a devotee to hear and sing the Lord's glories and meditate upon Him. Isolation does not have to entail leaving home and family. One can simply set aside time and space exclusively connecting to the Lord. Saint Ramakrishna said, "If you wish to make butter, you must curdle the milk and leave it in a place where it will remain undisturbed. If someone disturbs it, the curd will not stand. Then, if you churn it, butter will rise from your churning. Similarly, the aspirant should sit in quiet solitude, where no one can disturb him. Then, when he churns his heart through meditation and spiritual practice, the butter of sacred love will arise. If you give your heart and mind to the Lord in peace and solitude, you will attain true renunciation and devotion. But if you give your heart and mind to the world, you will attain only worldliness. You will become increasingly filled with greed and desire. The world is like water, the heart like milk. When water and milk are mixed together, both liquids cannot be separated. But if the heart is transformed into the butter of sacred love through spiritual practice, it separates from the water and can be extracted. When that state comes, never again shall the heart mix in the water of worldliness. Instead, it shall rise above materialism, and though remaining in the world, it shall simultaneously remain totally separate. Thus, having attained sacred love for the Lord and real understanding of who He is, one dwells in the world as one who is completely separate. When a fruit becomes mature and ripe, it falls and separates itself from the tree. Once a need for true renunciation is felt, the aspirant cuts off his worldly bondages. If one cuts off his connections prematurely, then social obligations such as taking care of family members and attending marriages and funerals, as well as a number of other duties, will disturb one's life of solitude. Once the aspirant becomes mature, he realizes that his family is not just limited to his material relations. The whole world becomes his family because the aspirant sees the Lord in everyone, and without discrimination, he serves them all with great humility. To eliminate delusion, the aspirant is required to go beyond the threefold qualities of nature. In the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna explains these three qualities, or guns, clearly. 1. Sattva, the quality of purity, mental stillness and clarity. 2. Rajas, the quality of passion, activity and restlessness. 3. Tamas, the quality of ignorance and inertia. These three qualities of nature exist in combinations and in different quantities within each individual, and he or she will act according to the quality that is most prominent in him or her. Sattva is a quality which makes a person search for happiness and worldly awareness. Rajas is a quality which makes a person lusty, greedy, and bound by habitual activities. Tamas is a quality which makes one foolish, lazy, and weak. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita 14.22-25, Krishna says, one who does not get upset by material purity, passion, or delusion when they are present, nor yearn for them when they are absent, who remains focused and undisturbed through all life's changes, which are caused by the interaction of the three material qualities, who is always engrossed in the bliss of the soul and accepts pleasure and pain alike, who sees a clump of earth, a rock, and a piece of gold as equal, who accepts both compliments and criticism in the same spirit, who is the same in pleasant or unpleasant circumstances, who treats friends and enemies equally, and who does not consider oneself the accomplisher of actions, can be understood to have passed beyond the three qualities. Lord Krishna concludes by saying, one who worships me by the path of devotion goes beyond the three qualities and becomes fit to attain Brahman. Bhagavad Gita 14.26. The final requirement for removing delusion is renunciation of the idea of obtaining or preserving material objects. There can be two forms of desires that arise in the heart and mind. Sometimes a person acquires some precious objects that he wants to preserve. and occasionally he tries to obtain objects that he does not have. Thus, Narad advises the aspirant to renounce the idea of obtaining and preserving any object, because one who has completely surrendered to the Lord needs to only depend on Him.